I won $10,000 and my boyfriend wanted a car, but after a big argument, I spent all the money. Now he's more upset than before, and I'm not sure how to tell him what happened. Original post. He's a full-time student with a part-time summer job while I balance both a full-time and a part-time job. We live together, mainly subsisting on my salary as he stretches his summer earnings. Neither of us owns a car. Our city's design makes it unnecessary. We either walk or use public transportation to save money. Each morning, we stop at a local corner shop before heading our separate ways for the day. His routine includes buying cigarettes and coffee, whereas I opt for fruit for my lunch and occasionally lotto tickets on weekends. He often teases me for what he calls paying the stupid tax on my lotto purchases. I retort that my little luxury is cheaper and far less harmful than his, lacking any risk of lung cancer. I've playfully warned him not to expect any share of my winnings. On the day I actually won, his response was indifferent. Fine, keep it all. It's not like I'm missing out on much. When I revealed my winning ticket, he was initially stunned, but quickly downplayed it, claiming I'd probably spent more on the tickets than I'd won. In jest, I quipped about splurging his share on myself, not realizing he would take it seriously. His anger flared up more intensely than I'd ever witnessed, and I, too, became upset rather than admitting I'd been joking. He's been fixated on getting a car, which I oppose. His persistence has only deepened my resolve not to share the winnings. While I'm open to using or saving the money for our mutual benefit, a car feels unnecessary. It would only incur ongoing costs like parking and maintenance, which I want to avoid. After enduring weeks of his brooding and claims of entitlement, he dragged me to a car dealership, attempting to shame me into agreeing in front of a salesman. Frustrated, I left the dealership in a huff. I sought refuge at my mother's house, where I decided to pay our rent through the end of the year and donate the remainder to charity. He remains unaware of how I've allocated the funds. Now, I'm grappling with guilt and uncertainty about how to disclose what I've done. I messed up by acting impulsively in response to his inconsiderate behavior, and I'm unsure how to mend things between us. He's already quite upset with me. What steps should I take next? Here are the top comments. Comment 1. I don't think you messed up at all. It seems like you're being hard on yourself without reason. Comment 2. I agree. The lottery tickets were bought with your money, so the winnings are rightfully yours. Since you aren't married, the situation would indeed be different if that were the case. It seems he's upset because he didn't support your decision to buy the tickets, and now he might feel entitled. I believe you've managed the money wisely. Besides, he no longer has to stress about rent, so he really shouldn't complain. Comment 3. The only scenario where you might have erred is if you face a tax bill from your winnings and don't have enough left to cover it. But it sounds like you've accounted for taxes and even included a celebratory dinner, right? That was very prudent of you. Comment 4. Overall, you come across as very pragmatic and sensible. Your boyfriend, on the other hand, does not. Why stay with someone who treats you poorly? Comment 5. Did you cover the rent for both of you or just for yourself? If it's your place and he hasn't been contributing to the rent, that changes the dynamics quite a bit. Response from OP. The apartment was mine before we started dating. I've never asked him for rent because it doesn't cost me more to have him live there. Comment 6. Just to clarify, he's living rent-free while you handle most financial responsibilities, and now he's demanding more from you financially? That hardly seems fair. Comment 7. You might want to consider what everyone is saying here. Your boyfriend doesn't seem to appreciate or respect the effort you put into the relationship. Also, did your dad set aside money for you when you turned 18 to help you escape a potentially abusive situation? That's the first I've heard of such a proactive and thoughtful gesture. It's an excellent idea, one that I plan to adopt if I ever have children. These comments highlight a blend of support and concern, reflecting a consensus that you've handled the situation with maturity and forethought. They also emphasize the need for a candid discussion about values and expectations in your relationship. Indeed, my dad had a serious talk with me about recognizing verbal and physical abuse, understanding consent, and how to avoid being abusive. He gave this talk to all his children, regardless of gender, and provided us with some money to ensure we could handle such situations responsibly. Update. Just a few months before my lottery win, my boyfriend had secretly quit school to join a Christian rock band, despite not being Christian, to support his emerging cocaine addiction. This revelation explained a lot about his recent behavior. He saw my lottery win as a sign that his band was about to hit it big and insisted we needed a car for touring. This led to a massive argument. I had made numerous sacrifices supporting his academic goals, which he abandoned to chase a rock star dream, while I was stuck in dead-end jobs. I told him I had supported one dream, and if that was over, it was now time for me to pursue my own aspirations. He promised fame and care in the future, but I reminded him that the commitments that mattered were the ones he made when I agreed to support his education. Ultimately, he broke up with me, suggesting I would regret my decision. However, I felt relieved, as it confirmed that he was not the person I had fallen in love with. I had his brother collect his belongings. He threatened legal action over an illegal eviction, but I countered with text messages from him stating the apartment was my issue and that he no longer lived there. The legalities were murky, but neither of us knew enough to pursue it. With my lease ending in 3 months, I looked forward to moving on. It's been tough realizing he's changed, but his actions have made it easier to accept. I'm more upset about the time, money, and opportunities I sacrificed, but it's better to have realized this now rather than later. I also got tested for STDs and other drugs as a precaution. Thankfully, everything came back negative. Additionally, I'm nearly certain that the break-ins at our apartment were staged by him. After one of his friends hinted that my ex tried to sell my stolen prescription medications and his laptop, which I had to replace, it all started to make sense. I informed the police about the situation, and his friend agreed to testify, though I'm not yet sure what will come of it. On a brighter note, I'm now working a single job that I actually enjoy, and it pays substantially better. My apartment feels more spacious without his clutter, and I no longer have to deal with an unflushed toilet or a toilet seat left up, which, in its own small way, is quite a victory. With the extra time on my hands, I've adopted a kitten and taken up knitting. I had resigned myself to the idea of becoming a quirky old cat lady, but surprisingly, I've also re-entered the dating scene. My second ever first date turned out to be with another woman, which was unexpected, yet felt strangely right. We've already planned a second date, and I'm feeling incredibly excited about it. Additionally, I mentioned to my dad how much you all appreciated his dump him advice and the talk about consent. He shared that the idea originally came from his grandmother when he was considering marriage at 18, not from my mom, so he insists the credit isn't his. Edit. Thanks for all the kind words and support, everyone. TL Audra. Boyfriend dumped me, and I can't really complain. Top comments. Comment 1. Sorry to hear he turned out to be such a disappointment. It's never fun getting dumped, but you definitely dodged a bullet here. Plus, your apartment must feel like a haven now without his mess, and with the toilet issues resolved. That's always a plus. Comment 2. Being dumped is tough, but it sounds like it was for the best in your case. Also, cheers to rescuing a kitty. That's wonderful. Comment 3. A coke addict and a thief. What a despicable person. Congratulations on freeing yourself from that mess. Enjoy your newfound freedom and all the personal projects. Comment 4. It's almost comical to think he wanted to be in a Christian rock band given everything else. Life throws some ironic twists at us. Comment 5. He never flushed the toilet? That's bizarre, but sounds like you're enjoying the little improvements now, like not falling into the toilet unexpectedly. Comment 6. Yay for the kitty. While these experiences were undoubtedly hard to endure, they will make for some interesting stories in the future. Deciding to drop out of school to join a Christian rock band seems like an incredibly poor life choice, especially considering the current state of the music industry and the niche market of Christian rock. Initially, I thought he was joking until he showed me some of his band's videos, which were frankly unimpressive. I'm unsure if cocaine is the only issue here. He might be using other substances as he's changed drastically from the man I first met. After seeking advice on the RR's relationships forum, I was cautioned to ensure I wouldn't face legal repercussions due to our living situation. We've been in this California apartment for 4 years, with him living with me for 3 without being on the lease or contributing to rent, although our landlord was aware of his presence. With my lease ending in 3 months, I'm planning to move. After he left voluntarily, he ignored responsibilities for some damages he had agreed to repair for our landlord. When I confronted him via text, he responded dismissively with, "Your apartment, your problem. I don't live there anymore, so deal with it." I saved these texts as evidence. When his brother came to pick up some of his music equipment, I made sure he took all of his belongings. My ex later accused me of illegal eviction, but I countered by showing him the texts, which quieted him down. Additionally, the police are investigating him concerning 3 break-ins at our apartment during the time he lived here, especially after a friend of his admitted he tried to sell stolen items, including my prescription meds and his laptop. Could these issues lead to legal complications for me? Transitioning now to the next scenario in our discussion. Story 2. I, a 29-year-old man, suspect that my 26-year-old girlfriend is only with me because she cannot be with her best friend, another 26-year-old man. Should I end the relationship? I apologize for the lengthy post. I didn't realize how much I needed to express until I started writing. Thanks in advance to anyone who takes the time to read this. My girlfriend Jordan and I have been living together for over 2 years, and we share 2 cats. Until recently, I believed our relationship was perfect, and I had even begun to think about proposing within the next year. We rarely argue. Jordan is incredibly sweet and easygoing, and generally we agree on almost everything. If not for the sheer perfection of our relationship up until now, I might have considered ending things over this past weekend, but everything has been so ideal that I'm hesitant to make a decision hastily, fearing I might be overreacting due to hurt feelings. Another key figure in this narrative is Jordan's lifelong friend, Mark. They both were raised in the same tight-knit religious community. While Jordan chose to leave the church at 19 and move to our current state, Mark remains deeply involved, even working for the church back in their hometown. He is essentially the only link she maintains to that community aside from her parents, a detail I'm starting to see as a potential red flag. This past Saturday, I met Mark for the first time. Jordan arranged for us to dine together while he was visiting our city. Initially, I wasn't thrilled about Jordan having a close male friend whom she often video chatted with, but since he was a childhood friend and their in-person meetings were rare, I trusted her and eventually warmed up to the idea. So, as we headed to dinner, I was more curious than anything, looking forward to meeting someone so significant to Jordan. However, their behavior at dinner raised serious doubts for me. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, but their interaction was unmistakable. They behaved like 2 people deeply in love. They were constantly touching, hands on arms, shoulders, and they even held hands several times throughout the evening. This display went beyond friendly affection and seemed to confirm there was something more between them than mere friendship. During dinner, there was a moment when Jordan and Mark laughed off a question I asked about why they had called her mom while I was away. This, combined with their behavior throughout the evening, has led me to believe that Jordan and Mark might actually be in love, not just friends as they claim. It seems the only thing keeping them apart is their differing views on religion. I suspect Jordan has accepted this, but it makes me feel like a second choice, secretly longing to be with Mark instead. This realization makes me think I should respect myself enough to leave a relationship where I might be the fallback option. However, the dilemma is that our relationship has been nearly perfect, and Jordan has treated me well, except for this one evening. The only time she acted this way was in Mark's presence. Normally, even with frequent calls to him, she hasn't made me feel second-rate. On one hand, I wonder if Mark's physical absence from our daily lives means his relationship with Jordan doesn't really impact us. Perhaps I should just calm down and trust her when she says they are just friends, even if their feelings might be complex. On the other hand, should I end things based on these doubts? Regarding advice from others, someone named Or Mikowski asked what Jordan said about all this when we discussed it privately at home. The truth is, we haven't talked about it. I've been sorting through my thoughts alone. I wasn't sure how to bring it up or if it was even a good idea. In response, another comment from Cap suggests that moving forward, the best step is to have an open conversation with Jordan, discussing how I felt during that dinner, and her reactions to my concerns will be crucial. I need to be careful, though, as she might dismiss my feelings too quickly without fully listening. If she dismisses your concerns, it's important to stand firm. Clearly express that you need to be heard and taken seriously on this matter. Start by telling her that her actions with Mark, like hand-holding and pressing their foreheads together, seemed more than just friendly and actually hurt you. It's crucial to set clear boundaries. Be direct about what behaviors you found inappropriate. The way forward will largely depend on how she responds to this conversation. It's possible she didn't realize her behavior was out of the ordinary, considering her background in a strict religious community where such actions might not have seemed unusual. Understanding this can help address your concerns without excusing her actions. However, if she becomes defensive and claims you are just jealous or insists that's just how their relationship is, that reaction will be very telling. If she quickly resorts to defense, it indicates she might not be fully considering your feelings. Even if she tries to downplay the situation, don't let it slide, especially if you're thinking about a long-term commitment. You have to consider the long run. If you plan to marry her, you need to be sure you're committing to someone who truly values and respects you, not someone who might leave you for someone else at a moment's notice. This advice has given me a lot to consider. Some people have suggested that Jordan's behavior might be influenced by her upbringing and not necessarily indicate deeper feelings for Mark. While it's important to consider this context, it doesn't mean I should ignore my feelings. It might be that she simply didn't realize how her actions appeared, rather than it being a definite sign of romantic interest. I think it would be a good idea to start the conversation with her about this issue. Several comments highlighted the inappropriateness of my girlfriend's behavior at dinner. AlleyCat222 mentioned, "I have a male best friend, and the most we do is a quick hug when we part. Holding hands and touching foreheads, especially in front of a significant other, seems disrespectful to me. But it's still best to talk about these things rather than ignoring them." Despite different perspectives on friendship boundaries, the consensus is that communication is key. Not addressing things that make you uncomfortable can undermine the foundation of your relationship. I hope we can resolve this and continue to build on our relationship. Rezua R commented on the specific actions, saying, "Touching foreheads and holding hands goes beyond typical friendship behaviors. It's hard to understand without context. It almost seems like they might view each other as the one that got away. Maybe there's a deeper history there, like a missed romantic opportunity." Aliendo Elise expressed shock. "My jaw dropped reading that. It's just so unexpected from mere friends." Nora Ray J agreed. "I could not imagine being in that situation. It would be heartbreaking." Cedri added, "It seems she still has strong feelings for him. If you're okay knowing you might not be her first choice, then perhaps continue the relationship." These comments suggest that every time Mark is around, you might feel like you're second best, which is a tough position to be in any relationship. 2 years together isn't a long time, and much can change. I worry that if circumstances change and Mark leaves the church, like Jordan did, she might choose to be with him. This fear looms large because people change over time. I'm not the same person I was at 26, and Mark could potentially change his beliefs too. But then again, I could perhaps accept that Jordan had someone before me if she truly chose me over him in the end. However, the possibility of her leaving to be with Mark, should he change his mind about the church, frightens me because it feels like that's what she's always wanted. First update 2 days later. I spoke with Jordan Wednesday night. To summarize, I didn't end the relationship. After our discussion, I realized that breaking up would be an overreaction to the dinner incident. While I was justified in my initial upset, Jordan agreed that the situation at dinner was not ideal. However, I might have jumped to the wrong conclusion about her feelings for Mark. Now that we've thoroughly discussed it, I see no reason to end what is the best relationship I've ever had. I'm relieved I didn't just go with my gut without understanding the full context, which Jordan helped clarify. I'm now willing to extend some grace, assuming such an incident doesn't recur. I'm grateful for everyone's advice to talk things through with her before making any rash decisions. During our conversation, I began by expressing how hurt I felt at dinner, watching her interact so closely with Mark, and we took it from there. It was a lengthy discussion, and I won't attempt to quote everything incorrectly, but the key point was that I felt excluded and uncomfortable with how touchy-feely they were. This was an important part of our talk where I shared my feelings directly with Jordan. Jordan appeared genuinely surprised when I brought up how much she and Mark were touching at dinner. She hadn't realized it was excessive. After reflecting, she acknowledged I was right and apologized. She explained that Mark tends to be very touchy with everyone, not just her, which might have made her overlook their behavior. She expressed regret that I hadn't mentioned it sooner, as she was unaware that their actions were coming off as obnoxious. I shared that this oversight was part of my concern. It seemed out of character for her not to notice such behavior, especially when it clearly affected me. I felt sidelined and began to wonder whom she valued more, or if her feelings for Mark were more than platonic. Jordan responded with further apologies, reassuring me of her love and affirming that I was the most important person in her life. She hadn't intended to make me feel excluded or to appear indifferent to my feelings. Her aim had been to ensure Mark didn't feel like the odd one out since he was single, but she realized this approach had the opposite effect, making me feel like the third wheel. Jordan then opened up about her deep history with Mark. She admitted that she does see him as more than just a friend, though not in a romantic sense. She emphasized that he is her best friend, a term she uses deliberately instead of just friend to signify their special bond. She avoided comparing him to a brother due to her personal history. Having lost her actual brother, she feels it's inappropriate to use that term for anyone else. She revealed that their connection strengthened significantly when she was 17 and attempted suicide. Following this crisis, she became ostracized by their community, but Mark was the sole person who stood by her. He became her lifeline, checking in daily to ensure she was coping, which also solidified their habit of frequent phone conversations. During this period, misconceptions arose, with Mark's parents wrongly assuming they were dating, which explained her comment at dinner about their perceived relationship. Jordan clarified that Mark's mom once labeled her a godless heathen, which shed some light on the family's perspective. I shared with Jordan that Mark had implied to me they might have been married if she had stayed in the church. I questioned whether she thought Mark might be in love with her, despite her feelings being platonic. She firmly denied this, and I believe she was sincere, although I had my doubts. Jordan thinks that if she had never left the church, marriage to Mark might have been likely, but more so due to community pressure than genuine desire. She doesn't view such a marriage as something that would have been beneficial. She interpreted Mark's comments as him being candid, possibly believing they would have made a good couple under church expectations, imagining her as the ideal wife in that context. Towards the end of our conversation, Jordan mentioned that Mark would be passing through our city again soon. She considered inviting him to spend time with us both, but offered to refrain if it made me uncomfortable. This gesture was significant to me. Many had suggested that if she didn't propose reducing contact with him, it might indicate she prioritized him over our relationship. Her proactive offer to avoid inviting him, recognizing my discomfort, seemed a positive sign. Jordan's openness about her history with Mark during her teenage years helped me understand why she wouldn't cut ties completely, and I wouldn't expect her to. I've decided to trust her explanation that their unusual closeness stems from their past experiences, not romantic feelings. I appreciated that Jordan was apologetic rather than defensive right off the bat, and her explanations made sense to me. While I remain wary of Mark, I feel that I can trust Jordan. However, I plan to observe whether her communication with him changes following our discussion. I won't impose any restrictions on her interactions with him, but I'm curious to see if she modifies her behavior naturally. Perhaps recognizing Mark's actions might indicate deeper feelings now that I've raised my concerns. The situation may revert to how it was before, and I might not fully understand any changes until Mark visits again. But I've decided not to preoccupy myself with worries until something concrete happens. Some comments on the situation have been quite straightforward. Signal Blackberry 326 noted, holding hands and pressing foreheads with a friend of the opposite sex in front of your partner is outrageous, but you do you. Tamerlane Tully was cynical, saying, well, it seems like nothing was really resolved here. There was also some skepticism in the feedback. Pixel Spartan 167 questioned whether Jordan truly acknowledged the inappropriateness of her physical interactions with Mark, doubting her awareness and honesty. Did she really not notice how touchy they were? And did you ask how she'd feel if the roles were reversed? Another suggestion was more controversial. Consider discreetly recording their interactions when I'm not present to see if her behavior shifts without my eyes on them. This advice, while extreme, reflects a desire for undeniable proof of her actions, potentially useful if the relationship ends. However, this approach raises ethical concerns about privacy and trust, which are crucial to consider before taking any such steps. If Jordan adjusts her behavior in Mark's absence, it may indicate that she's taken our conversation to heart. Ideally, she would also reduce her frequent communications with him, as sustaining such an intense relationship could be problematic, especially if we plan to marry. It's essential to address these issues now. She did acknowledge that their level of physical contact was inappropriate, Reflecting on their interactions, she admitted feeling embarrassed and realized it was wrong to mirror Mark's overly familiar behavior as if it were normal. I didn't need to ask her how she'd feel if the roles were reversed. She seemed to understand immediately once I expressed how their actions affected me. Unleashed 99 commented on the situation, expressing skepticism. I'm glad you brought up your concerns and gained some insight. However, I suspect your girlfriend might be deceiving herself more than anyone. If she's in daily contact with Mark and didn't recognize the inappropriate nature of their physical interaction after a long separation, it suggests a deep denial. Their profound emotional connection, despite their differing core beliefs, complicates matters further. Her obliviousness to the intensity of their interaction, even with you right there, is a red flag. I've seen many similar cases in my work with infidelity. It's tough, and I hope I'm wrong for your sake, but if she doesn't significantly distance herself from Mark, you might find yourself dealing with a deeper betrayal in the future. It's hard to say this as I've experienced such betrayal myself and would do anything to spare others that pain. Even if you trust your girlfriend, keep a watchful eye and consider that there might be validity in what those with experience in these matters are advising. As one commenter recommended, the book Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass might be very relevant to our situation and could offer some insights. Regardless of how things unfold, I hope you find peace and happiness. If Jordan, Mark, and I are together again, I'll be observant, but I don't expect that to happen soon. I acknowledge there's a chance Jordan might be mistaken about her feelings. After our discussion, I'm inclined to believe that she's perhaps confused rather than dishonest or manipulative. If it becomes clear that this is the case, it could mean the end of our relationship. However, I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt for now. Specific Bag 7401 voiced concerns. It's odd, especially how she didn't want Mark to feel like the odd one out, yet he was not just visiting a couple. If Jordan intended to show empathy, she missed considering your feelings. I'm not convinced our next meeting will be different. There's a tendency to excuse Jordan's actions. This situation might continue to trouble me. It seems like I might be setting my expectations too low. It's disheartening, but with more context, I feel somewhat more reassured. Don't get me wrong, I didn't like feeling sidelined at dinner, nor was I comfortable with how physically close Mark and Jordan were. However, if Jordan truly didn't mean anything romantic by it and is willing to respect boundaries now that she understands my discomfort, then perhaps it's not as alarming as I initially thought. The question remains, am I trying to convince myself because I want to believe her? Or is she genuinely trustworthy? This is something I need to reflect on more deeply. I truly appreciate the thoughtfulness of your comment and understand why many might think I'm allowing Jordan to gaslight me. If I were on the outside looking in, I might suspect the same. But I genuinely believe that my feelings aren't just about wanting to trust her. It's more than that. It's challenging to encapsulate the entirety of our conversation in a single post, but I am confident in her sincerity. This conviction isn't about abandoning objectivity for the sake of comfort. In fact, maintaining my initial skepticism would have been simpler and more familiar. I acknowledge that Jordan's relationship with Mark is peculiar and perhaps not entirely healthy. There might be unacknowledged feelings on his side even if Jordan is unaware. Despite this, I believe her when she says her feelings for him aren't romantic and that she wants to be with me. This was my primary concern. I still have issues that need addressing, particularly how Jordan acts around Mark. It's crucial she understands that her behavior cannot undermine our relationship, even if she doesn't see it as romantic. From our discussions, I'm hopeful she will honor this boundary. Second update, 2.5 months later. I've never posted an update like this before, so I hope it's okay. Many have asked for an update, and here it is. Jordan and Mark had a fallout which has seemingly resolved the situation. After I expressed discomfort, Jordan declined Mark's invitation to meet when he passed through our city again. Mark accused me of influencing her decision. Jordan acknowledged that my feelings were part of her decision to ask for space from him, emphasizing her respect for our relationship. This led to their current estrangement, marking a significant turn in our ongoing issue. Mark was really offended when Jordan explained that his presence was affecting our relationship. He kept asking why it was disrespectful, pretending not to understand her answers. Eventually, he started guilt-tripping her, saying she had changed for the worse over the years and that the Jordan he knew would never blow him off. This really upset Jordan as she felt Mark was implying she had become a bad person since leaving the church. She broke down in tears and ended up hanging up on him. Afterwards, we had a long conversation, and I told her I believed Mark was toxic. Anyone else would have understood her perspective without trying to manipulate her. Jordan agreed, mentioning that much of what Mark said reminded her of the church, particularly his attitude during the argument. She admitted that his behavior made her not want to talk to him anymore, even beyond the issues with our relationship. The next day, Mark texted Jordan asking if she was really going to choose her boyfriend over her only friend, claiming he had been there for her through everything. Jordan responded, explaining again that their friendship had to change now that she was in a committed relationship and that he should understand that. Mark replied, saying he couldn't believe she would treat her best friend that way. When Jordan tried to respond, she discovered he had blocked her number. This made her feel guilty, like she had been too harsh on him. But after we talked it through again, Jordan realized she was right to cut ties if Mark was going to treat her like she owed him something. Jordan then blocked him in return, including on social media, so that if he ever tried to apologize, she could ignore him. A couple of weeks passed, and while I was relieved not to hear from Mark, Jordan was understandably upset by how things ended. Even though she recognized that Mark wasn't a positive influence in her life, his reaction stirred up old feelings of abandonment, similar to when her church friends turned their backs on her during her teenage years. At this point, I asked Jordan if she'd ever considered going back to therapy to deal with her religious trauma. She told me she had gone for a few months after leaving the church, but the therapist wasn't very helpful. I suggested trying again with a different therapist, as it seemed clear that these unresolved issues were still affecting her. Jordan agreed and decided to make an appointment. She's had a couple of sessions now, and so far she says they're going well. I haven't asked her for many details about the therapy, so I can't provide much more on that front. Relevant comments. Asik. Mark sounds incredibly toxic. He gave off questionable vibes before, especially with how certain he was that he and Jordan would have been together. But the way he's treating her now shows he's not a real friend. If he wanted to be her number one friend, he should have listened to her instead of demanding things. I'm guessing his religious beliefs influence his behavior, where men speak and women listen. And yes, encouraging Jordan to find a better therapist is the right move. It's not about therapy not working. It's about finding the right therapist, and I hope she does. Julia Valentine. I've been following your posts since the beginning, and while it's unfortunate how things with Mark turned out, it seems like it's for the best. Jordan returning to therapy is a huge step forward. Does she have other friends outside of you and Mark for support? Building a new support system could really help her heal. Wishing you both the best. Jordan sounds like a wonderful person, and I'm glad you two are getting through this together. As for other friends, yes, Jordan has a good support network. We've built close friendships with a few couples, and she also has a group of friends from her workplace whom she talks to when things are bothering her. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more surprising real-life stories just like this one.